Hey y'all, welcome to Behind the Carnival Barkers. An irreverent behind-the-scenes podcast that interviews the craftspeople who make unscripted television. Hosted by me, Amy Peters, who is a New York-based Emmy Award-winning editor and producer of nonfiction content. Don't Be a Dinosaur with Kathryn Hood-Moore. Season 1, Episode 8.
This show is supported by KizzleKit. Make your party a hit with KizzleKit. Please shop for your fancy lifestyle accessories at kizzlekit.com. That's www.kizzlekit.com.
Hi, Amy.
Hey. For our season finale, I invited filmmaker, editor, and curator Kathryn Hood-Moore to discuss her extensive career in unscripted television. Kathryn's journey begins with her military service, leading to an unexpected career in editing and an uncanny ability to problem solve and tell stories.
Is it bad if I wear these?
No, I like what you like.
Okay.
Kathryn is a pioneer of many unscripted formats we take for granted these days and offers valuable guidance for creatives facing an evolving industry, stressing the importance of flexibility and adopting emerging technologies lest you be left behind.
Kathryn, thanks for doing the podcast with me.
Yes, thanks for having me.
What are you drinking? What is that? That looks good.
I am drinking a pina colada that I made with fresh pineapples.
Nice.
Caribbean rum.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate you taking the time really and effort to do this with me. I've been talking to people in the industry who have been hurting or working and still having trouble getting by. So you being one of my BFFs, I wanted to be sure to hear your voice in this conversation. My very first question is your backstory. It fascinates me so much how you were in the Army and an actual veteran, but then you're also a veteran in the industry who've been doing this for decades, and you did it in its formative years. You invented the genre. So can you talk to me about like how you got into it and why?
Yeah, I can. So I'll try to keep it brief as far as the backstory goes. Like you said, I was in the military. And while I was there, I figured out that I really actually needed to do something creative with my life. And so I started finding these outlets, one of which was a friend of mine had a music studio with the ASR-10, and he taught me how to make beats. So that was like my first introduction to any sort of like digital compositing and things of that nature. And I was taking some journalism courses at the time. I started managing a rap group, and I was working with the USO to do concert promotions. And so I was like, I really like this stuff. I want to get out of the military and work in the entertainment industry, which I thought I would work in the music business. Never imagined that I would work in the film business. So fast forward, I get out of the military, I go back, I continue studying journalism. Then I went to the Colorado Institute of Art, where I studied music, film, television, business management, and production. So covered all of those things. And at the time, as far as music production, things were in that sort of MIDI space where it was partially analog and partially digital. And then I made my first documentary as a student called Smoke in the Glass. Very cheesy, but I learned how to edit on that film using like a Sony CMX. So it was tape to tape editing, beta. And I had a teacher who was very patient with literally just like showing me how to edit on that thing. So that was a really great practical experience for me. And when I finished school, I made this like tri-folded resume that included like all of these skills in all of those areas that I just said, because I had learned how to like do engineering and how to build a music studio. So I sent that resume and my little 10-minute film to literally every production company, every network, every radio, every post facility in New York, because I knew that I needed to either go to New York or LA to really work in the industry. I was in Colorado at the time. And
you grew up in Denver, right?
Yep, I grew up in Denver, and I had moved around when I was in the military or whatnot, but when I went school, I was back in Colorado. And so I figured New York was a little bit more diverse than LA, and I would have a better shot of becoming a filmmaker. So that's why I decided to go to New York. And while I waited to hear back from all these production companies that I had applied to, I worked as a temp. And if I listed every job I had, it would take up your whole podcast to list all of them. But they were like good experiences. And I was working at Prudential. I was working for the vice president of Prudential. And they offered me a job. They offered me decent salary, benefits, including paying for me to get advanced degrees in school, get a Series 7 license. And the guy was like, everybody who works for me becomes a vice president, millionaire, and like retires by the time they're 30. And I got a call from this place called Video Portfolios Productions. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is my gateway to becoming a filmmaker. I take the job of Video Portfolios, which was a pretty small company with a large reach. And I actually learned so much about production and entrepreneurship from working there. So they had 5 people on staff, including me. And Video Portfolios did actors' reels, directors' reels, videotape depositions. And so it was just great experience for me. And at that time, editing was just starting to be nonlinear. So it was still like a mixture where you have to digitize things from a tape onto the Avid. So that was like the first version of Avid that I was using. And I just taught myself how to use Avid using those same principles that had carried over from linear editing. And it was good practice. It was, pre me doing things for broadcast for the most part. So there weren't any of those types of deadlines. And then at a certain point, Oxygen Media was launching, and they were looking for Avid editors who were willing to learn Final Cut Pro. And some of the engineers from Avid had left to Apple to make Final Cut Pro. So I was like, yeah, I'm interested in doing that.
Yeah.
And that's when I started freelancing, which was like 1999. Just agreed to because I was interested in everything about production. Like I wasn't saying no to anything. And I certainly never set out to be an editor. But I just found myself in these spaces where, that it was available to me. I was interested in the technology. So I started editing a program called Pure Oxygen. It was a doc-based show, like 99 when we were launching. And after that, I started to just get a demand for my work for editing. I guess it was around 2000 when we had a strike for actors and writers.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I think a lot of the larger networks and whatnot, they're like, hey, it's cheaper to do this unscripted type of format where we don't have to hire writers or actors. We just have to pay for producers and editors.
Mm-hmm.
So initially, those programs were closer to straight docs. And so back then, it was more like you would shoot for a few months with your subjects, and then the editors and producers in post would review the material, put it together based on, what you had, keep it really true to the story like you do in proper docs where there's like, you have to be integral and you have to portray the story exactly how it really happened. Just really took off as there became more of a demand for that type of programming. I was really there as it was all happening. And so I would be getting hired to figure out how does this look. So like I did a sizzle for kind of the first cooking show, and shortly after that I did Inked, which was the first tattoo show.
Right.
And then it just really like took off from there. From that, like people started calling me for editing all the time, and it was like pretty lucrative, in terms of like the rates for editors. And I was married when I moved to New York. I was divorced at this point, and I was here for making more money than I was at Video Portfolios Productions. I think I was making like $22,000 a year when I started.
Right.
And so, yeah, and then it just took off from there, and that was a thing because there weren't already these like staples and rules for how to tell these types of stories. A lot of times there was a role for what people would call a lead editor or a senior editor, where you're coming and helping them figure out what the style is, what the format is in post.
Yeah.
And I've always maintained that for myself as a creative. I treat every project as its own thing. Like I never take a cookie cutter approach. I like to analyze all the factors. Or at a time where we were going from analog to digital, no one ever figured out how to speed up the process of digitizing things. So that always had to happen in real time.
Yeah.
And I like watching the material if possible, if time permits. The budget permits. It's always nice for me to be able to review the material. And I have a photographic memory, so that's like more cheat codes for me. To be able, once I've seen the material, like I literally know everything that's there. I know the shots, whatever.
What did we meet on? Did we met in Atlanta on the Prancing Elites, right?
Project, yep. Crazy.
Okay. And then we went on to work on My Current Situation and a handful of other things in the late 2010s.
Yeah, but that was maybe about almost 10 years later.
Yeah.
The first era that we were talking about. And now there's a demand. Everyone needs to have some unscripted programming. And but sometimes getting notes from people where they have this kind of prescription where they're saying, hey, we want this sort of like style. And I know for a fact that sometimes I would have been the first one to have done that type of style and program. So they became staples because people like rules, like rule of three or whatever the case may be. So now that this has been going on for a while, there started to be these sort of standards. And then also just like the pacing, even for the viewers, what people are accustomed to be to seeing, you know, like the technology involved to the point where now there's a picture-in-picture effects. People, the audience can watch more than one thing happening at the same time, or on their TV. They can have the game going while they're watching another show. So I think there became more of a demand for things to be even faster paced and even more stimulating.
Yeah. Okay, so while we're on the theme of like how things kind of evolved, then we were working together on Girls Cruise, and that was 2019, right before the pandemic. And we would hang out in Times Square, and I think of that gig as being where even pre-pandemic, our industry kind of started to slow down. It was harder to keep booked constantly the way I had done earlier, like a decade earlier. So what are your feelings or thoughts on that era?
We're talking about 2019. And when I started, it was like 1998. So we're like 20 years. So
Yeah.
I feel like 20 years is about the amount of time that everything to do with technology goes in waves. And things keep, like I like to make comparisons to music production and the music industry to film and television, because I feel like the film and television industry tend to follow what happens tech-wise in the music industry. So if you think about it, there was a phonograph, then there was like the, you know, 8 tracks, and there were albums, and there were cassettes, and there were CDs, and like ever so often those changes are happening with technology. And as the changes with the technology are happening, also the changes of what that technology costs and who has access to it also change. So a long time ago in the music industry, when you were going to record an album, you had an orchestra, you had to have a band, you had to be an amazing singer like Franklin, because there was no auto-tune to make it sound better. There was no such thing as just being a recording artist without being a talented recording artist. And I just think that our industry is no different than, you know, it's evolving. So there was that natural evolution that was happening. Like those first habits that I was working on, you had to have hundreds of thousands of dollars to. And you know, fast forward 20 years later, you can get a subscription for $500 for a year. So that made it more affordable for more people to get into the pool of creating things. And it's like an oversaturation. Even the distribution outlets from the time when I was a child, where there was 12 or 13 channels, to fast forward where there's thousands of channels, and just like a pure oversaturation of content in the media. And so because of that oversaturation, there's pros and cons, right? You get a lot more things that aren't extremely harmful. You just get a lot more things in general to where you can sift through, find things that are good. But then also it just helps, you know, people who maybe didn't just inherit a bunch of money to have like huge studios or whatever, or maybe they weren't related to certain things. That allowed those people to start entering as content creators. So I think that those natural evolutions are happening. And then around that 2019, 2020 era, yes, there was a quarantine. During that time, I was actually really busy. It wasn't the same year working in the studio. So I was doing things that had become an assistant's job that I normally wouldn't do. So then you had the strikes again.
Yeah.
And so you started to have these shakeups with some of the bigger studios. And then the studios had pressure because the end game in terms of the distribution changed. No longer are you checking your ratings based on how many people you have in a captive audience watching your show on the night that it debuts on TV. Now you're counting the ratings of when are people rewatching it when it's online, or when are people choosing to, watch these things on demand. That's very different. So now every major network, every movie studio, they have to have a streaming entity or their stuff is not getting to audiences. And then fast forward again, we start to have the uprise of the individual content creators, the streamers, the influencers, the Tysonauts, who are totally bypassing everything about the last 25 years. And they're going straight directly to their audience, or they have their own distribution deal with YouTube or whoever. And, if they have their millions of followers, now they're getting their ad sales money themselves. Everyone has a podcast, and Oprah has a podcast now. She had to adapt to saying, hey, our industry has changed. So I look at it like that. I don't look at it as like the beginning of the end. I look at it as the transition. I look at it as our industry is changing. And we also have to adapt and change in order to stay engaged and to stay relevant. We have to engage with our industry differently than we did when we first started, because the landscape is different. So we can't do the same old shit. Getting back to the music industry. Once you have people starting to release their own music online and have them sell their own music, now the record companies, they don't have A&R representatives anymore. It's like now they want to go directly to the artists who are already selling their work to fans who already have their own following. Now you have basically a small business that's making maybe 1 million, and it's a large corporation. You can say, hey, we're going to bring them under our umbrella, and now we can make more money off of this younger artist. And I think the same thing is happening in our industry. I mean, I think it suffices to say that like a chain of events happened that really impacted our industry, like you said. And it's not just us, our clients. A lot of the streamers were all like, hey, we're going to start sourcing content from other places. When you have the shakeups with the ownerships of some of the movie studios and things of that nature, widespread layoffs. And I think that's all a bit of a trickle down from the political landscape. And not only that, just like kind of a wave that happens over time as far as technology phasing out. We went from film to videotape to digital to you had to be a movie studio, or you had to, have a $300,000 Avid system with a dongle in order to edit. And now, like, every kid can just get Canva or CapCut or all these different programs to maybe not do it on the same level of mastery in terms of storytelling, but the technology is at many more people's fingertips.
Yeah, you bring up the music industry, and that's totally a great analogy, or even precursor in a lot of ways, because Napster did a number on them.
Artists that are breaking these days have their own following of over 1 million followers, and then the record labels are like, hey, here's a viable business that's already revenue generating. Let's latch onto them, as opposed to here's Destiny's Child. Let's groom these artists to make them into pop stars. And I think that is the wave of the future. I think that that's where our industry is. Like, I don't think a lot of those big shows with the big staff and, all those credits that you would normally see, some of that is happening, but just definitely not on the same scale. And I just think that in order to sort of weather the storm and like go with the evolution, we have to embrace the new way that productions are happening. We have to embrace being the content creator, being the person who owns the IP, being the person that's directly in touch with your audience, and just diversifying and like trying different things. But that's what I believe is the way to go, and I'm certainly going in that direction myself.
In terms of your colleagues and editors, and in a lot of cases producers potentially pivoting, what is there a place for folks like us in this new world? Like, what do you see?
I mean, I always believe that your gifts can make room for you, but you have to figure out what that is and how that works for you. For me, I've basically been self-employed for my whole adult life, so too much to turn back now. So I just feel, pushed, inspired, motivated to keep doing that, to keep adapting how I can. Not everyone can do that. I'm a content creator because that's what you gotta be. And
yeah.
We're not going to engage with our industry the way we used to, because frankly, it's changed, and that's it.
Yeah, editor skill set is very niche, especially in reality, especially in nonfiction. It widens up a little bit, but reality had a very specific tweak to what we could do.
Yeah.
I too come across folks who are like, I don't even know what I could do. Do you have advice for those kind of folks? Like, what do you think?
I don't know what to tell them, because me personally, I've always not wanted to be pigeonholed. And I'm a multi-gifted artist. There are many things that I can do. Like, I've edited almost every genre, and I like being able to do that. Sometimes people think you can't do it.
Yeah.
Shoot, I am so right. I do other things as well. So advice to other people is like, be open to doing other things. If all you know how to do is cut reality shows, you better figure out how to cut something else, because you're just not going to stay as busy as you used to. And then beyond that, with the advent of AI, that's like where we're heading. And I think that we, in addition to adapting, we have to adapt to embracing even new and evolving technologies even more, because our industry, our work is very much dictated by the technology. So you got to embrace that. You can't be afraid to use the technology. Like, have I been going crazy with this thing? I know. Have I used it to, create a script or a transcript or something? Yes. Do I want to do it more? Yes. Like, if I was going to give advice to people, learn something from AI. Just saw online the other day that Harvard is offering like a handful of classes for free, and one of them is learning and integrating AI for your business. And I think that's great. I'm actually thinking about doing that. Like, I think that's important. I think it's important to always stay on top of the modern technology and the evolution of technology, so that it doesn't eat you up and you don't become a dinosaur who gets swallowed up.
Absolutely.
Either that or lose some weight and try to marry rich.
I'll go for the former. Okay, so it's one thing to retool, but then I feel like our traditional clients aren't the ones hiring. But where do you drum up work? Where do you look for it?
You got to be resourceful. My approach is to get on the content creation wave and create my own shit and put it out for myself.
Yeah.
I'm not actively looking for jobs, because the fact of the matter is, like, most of the work that I ever did as a freelance editor was not about me searching for a job, searching for anything. Most of the time, the work that I've done wasn't even ever posted. It was word of mouth. It was my reputation preceding me because of my work. People reaching out to me and saying, hey, we want what you bring to the creative process on our project.
Yeah.
So if that's happening less, I'm not going to try to now start digging around and searching for stuff. No, I have always wanted to publish my own work, and that's what I'm working on. I don't believe there's a such thing as giving people advice as to how to go about doing like that. You have to know how to do that. You have to know what you're doing, what you're bringing to this world yourself. I don't think that anyone else can tell you how to do that. Like, someone can tell you, like, these are the tools that you use, and these are how you use those tools, but you got to be creative and like come up with that on your own.
Yeah, totally.
And now there's AI. I don't think that AI is going to replace writers and producers and editors, but I think it's certainly something that we need to embrace the tools that are available in order to keep evolving along with the technology.
And exactly the parallel between Napster and the downfall of the music industry as YouTube is doing to our industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally what it is. Same way that Napster and LimeWire and some of these things totally changed the way the music industry, because if you think about the music industry, and it's a form of media, right? Just like film, television, streaming, etc. The way the media is created is different now. The way the media is delivered is different now. The fact that there's now, you know, when I first started in this industry, they were trying to figure out how will we stream video? Who is going to be the first one to come up with the standard to be able to upload things at a certain rate? Now people are uploading gigs and terabytes of shows and series and things. So that is the parallel. It's like the technology is changing, and that's affecting who's using it and how the users are getting it to the customers. Because really the bottom line of any business is sales. Even if we're doing a creative aspect in the sales, at the end of the day, we're creating content that is based on someone trying to reach a target audience of theirs.
What are you doing next?
Now, I'm trying everything. I'm casting a wide net. So, novel that I'm working on that I intend to publish as a novel first, and then option that as a script for either a series or a feature. Really excited about that project. I have several other projects that I'm working on developing that are in various stages of development, and I'd be willing to do co-productions with, but the main thing is just getting ready for, I do believe that it's coming, and I do believe that it is happening in some instances where projects are getting bought and getting picked up, but it's not the same. And I think that, you know, very wise person told me, like, don't wait for the green light. Sometimes you go through that whole like pitching thing, and you're trying to pitch here to a production company or movie studio, whatever, and you're using all this time and maybe it goes nowhere, and you're using other resources. And so sometimes you just gotta like self-publish and put it out there. So that's another thing that I'm working on. And I'm just being open to other things as well. Just like, you know, I'm a multi-hyphenated, multi-talented, gifted creative. And so I do many things and just creating new content. I'm also looking into the idea of teaching certain skills to content creators, potential revenue stream. And I'm also a really good cook and drink maker and baker. So I've been like getting into that, and I have two products that people really love. And I'm just trying to be creative, and you know, they say necessity is the mother of invention. This period of time has frankly been humbling, but it's also driving me to create other avenues and be the one to make it rain, as opposed to one of the ones who's getting wet or that is dripping on because it's just raining all around. Like we had a golden era, and I think that era is over. And I consider myself someone who's always been very much a leader in the industry when it comes to storytelling and arts and media and entertainment, and I'm not going to stop.
That's awesome. So being free of the grind hits the pocketbook, but it frees your mind for creativity.
To some extent, you know, it's hard to be creative when you're struggling, honestly.
Yeah.
But I thank God for all the creative ideas and energy that I have that come to me, that keep flowing to me. And my daughter, she's going through a crochet phase right now. And she says, sometimes I think about, you know, I have creative genius and my potential is endless. I can make anything I want.
Wow.
And I love that. And I'm inspired by that. And I wholeheartedly believe that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much.
I love you and I appreciate you so much. And I hope that we sell all types of projects.
Yeah, I know, right? They're coming to us. We're going to do it. As this season of Behind the Carnival Barkers comes to a close, I'm feeling incredibly grateful for all the amazing conversations I've had with such talented and insightful creatives. Hearing Kathryn embrace new technologies really highlights the spirit of adaptability that runs through our industry. While the landscape is always changing, the core creativity and passion of the craftspeople is what truly drives it forward. It's been a privilege to share these behind-the-scenes stories, and I'm already looking forward to next season. Thank you for listening. Your support means the world. See you next time. We'd like to thank Kathryn for jumping on a call with me. You can find her credit list as Kathryn Moore on IMDb. Music in this episode is provided by DJ Williams, whose work you can find on YouTube at DJW Music, also linked in the show notes. Post-production services are provided by Audio Photosynthesis. We'd like to thank our sponsor, KizzleKit. To shop for your very own lifestyle accessories, go to www.kizzlekit.com. That's KIZZLEKIT.com. Next season on Behind the Carnival Barkers, we'll hear from executive producers, line producers, and editors. Please follow us on social media for the schedule, upcoming guests, and other programming notes and updates. Sign up for our newsletter at carnivalbarkers.substack.com. And please, please, please hit that like button if you enjoyed the conversation.